I'm Tom Landon. Join me as we learn what it takes to find jobs for Virginia graduates. On the day we're recording this episode, Virginia's unemployment rate is at a historically low 2.7%. And except for the early days of the pandemic, it's been low for several years now. One of the things holding back our economy is a lack of qualified workers. And my guests today are here to talk about their efforts to ensure that high school graduates who want to enter the workforce are ready to do so. Antonio Rice is the president and CEO of Jobs for Virginia Graduates. And I'm also joined by Courtney Clemens, who is the program and data manager for Jobs for Virginia Graduates. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
And I always like to start the program before we talk about policy or anything else, is just kind of talk to people about their own path. So how did you get here? Antonio, what is the path that led you to this?
I don't know if we have enough time, but I do have to tell the story because it's very interesting. And so after graduating UVA and then playing with the Dallas Cowboys, and when I say playing, it wasn't a whole lot of playing. It was more sitting and watching.
You got to wear the uniform,
it was nice.
Right?
It was nice. It was nice. And so I find myself in Richmond, Virginia, starting my first job, real job. And so I get a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Ron Weeks, who happens to be a JVG instructor or specialist. And he goes, "Hey, Antonio, come on down, and we'd love for you to come down and talk to our students about the importance of an education, staying in school, all that good stuff." Well, I just got released from the Cowboys. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was embarrassed to even show my face. And so I agreed. I show up at the class, and those kids were amazing, just amazing. So for somebody who wasn't feeling very special, they made me feel special. So they really helped me get over that slump, if you will, after being released from my dream, right? It was my dream to play in the NFL. Didn't work out, but it took a JVG class, a Jobs for Virginia graduate class, students to help me over the hump. And so fast forward 30 years, I'm at my desk working, phone rings, it's Ron Weeks saying, "Hey, Barry Glenn is retiring and you need to take his job." I'm like, "Well, wait, Ron, good to see you. It's been 30 years. It's good to see you, buddy. Good to hear from you. What's going on?" I said, "No, I'm here on a mission." The way that you interacted with those kids, you really need to consider a job change and taking on this role. And so I met with Barry Glenn, went through the interview process, and here we are.
Well, and it's just an example of how we never know, right? You never know how any one little thing might come back to you later. Courtney, you and I worked together when we were both when I was a social studies teacher. What did you teach?
I taught English and French.
Right, that's right. Couldn't remember. At Virtual Virginia, and now you're doing this work with Jobs for Virginia Graduates. But let's talk a little bit, because I know that you've had a interesting career path as well.
Yes, I started back in 1999 in the city of Pittsburgh as my first job as a teacher. I've been in education for over 20 years, from that inner city school to rural West Virginia to virtual Virginia to rural Virginia. I worked for Power School actually for a few years and got a taste of what working for a private company would be like. But when this job came open, for me, being an educator, no matter what I was teaching, I was always trying to help students become successful citizens after they left. It's always my primary job, as it is for any teacher. So I was very excited when this role came open and I was able to come on board with Jobs for Virginia Graduates.
And again, just another example of kids might think they want to be this, but over time, life changes, and we don't think when we're 18 then we maybe want to be a teacher or a pro football player, how that's going to work out. So, all right, Antonio, you're the CEO, so I'm going to ask you, what is Jobs for Virginia Graduates? And here's your chance for your kind of elevator pitch.
Here we go. So basically our mission is it's fairly simple. We're here to assist students here in Virginia who are facing barriers to success. We make sure that they graduate high school, and then upon graduation, we make sure that they have good, high-quality paying jobs And then we do a full year of follow-up. So once they graduate, once they get the job, you will get contacted from us or their specialist every month. And they're checkup calls, if you will. How's it going? What's working? What's not working? And so we ensure positive outcomes. It's basic and very simple, but it's working. It's highly effective.
Right. And Courtney, I know that you interact with both schools, but also industries as these kids get placed into jobs and things, and we'll talk about how all that works. But when you, either of you can answer this as well, but when you talk to employers in Virginia, what are some of the things that they wish their employees had that maybe your program can help with?
Well, a lot of it now seems to come down to communication skills, especially that face-to-face communication. A lot of today's students are missing that. So, with our students, our specialists in each school have a set of competencies that they cover with students, and they are really geared toward, how do you find a job? How do you keep a job? How do you quit a job if you want to quit it? Like, what's the appropriate way to quit a job even? And they really are trying to make sure that those students have the skills that most employers are looking for. And a lot of that does come down to communication right now.
Well, communication, and I'm married to someone who's spent the last year in schools looking at our education system. And she says, one of the things, she came back to me after one of her trips and just said, one of the things that's the hardest with some of these at-risk kids is I can't get them to even look me in the eye. And so when you're talking to a group of kids or to, how do we get kids to understand how important those soft skills are?
Well, so it's a dance, right? It's a dance because in terms of the barriers that we talk about, you never know what those particular barriers are. And so the goal is to help them overcome those particular barriers. And so part of the message, Tom, I believe, is just you don't have to be the circumstance that you currently find yourself in. And that sounds all warm and fuzzy and stuff like that, but I was a JVG kid. Okay, it wasn't called JVG. Now I'm the youngest of 10. Sometimes we had to, the clothing that you wore was the same clothes that your siblings wore the day before, and so it was tough on us. But we kind of got through it. But that necessarily didn't define who I was and what I wanted to be. There were folks out there. We had outstanding specialists, wonderful program and data managers who help our students overcome those barriers and kind of see all of their possibilities. And I think that's what it comes down to, and I think that's the crux of our organization, is to really moving the kids, our students, from where they are to where they say they want to be, and then applying and supplying the skills needed to do so.
Yeah, Courtney, you mentioned these specialists who are in the school. Are these generally, school employees? Are they who are taking this on as one of those extra duties we're asked to do in schools?
It's a variety.
And what are they doing?
So we have about 53 specialists across the state right now, and some of them are teachers, some of them are school counselors, some of them are in other roles in a school, and usually they do have another position in the school as well. And they can run this program kind of in a way that best fits their own school. It's not a cookie cutter curriculum. It's not a cookie cutter program. So we have some specialists who will go into other teachers' classrooms and co-teach with them to help deliver these skills. We have some who have a standalone class, and they're only working with a group of 25 to 35 kids. So it's really focused on that group, and they have time to work with them one-on-one, which is a big part of what Antonio was saying, that ability to form connections with them, to help them, give them that extra little push to reach their potential.
And I think that connection idea, any program that's successful in the human services area, I think it is about building connections too, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you get kids to see that these specialists and others in the school and if they're placed in a job are on their team?
Yeah, so it's consistency, right? And so again, once a student graduates, they're going to get a phone call or an email or a text message every month. And so we're consistent with that. Our connectivity rate is 99% in terms of when we reach out to our students. So we're on top of that. And it's, when a student sees that you really care about them, they're willing to take a step towards you too. And then hopefully at some point you meet in the middle, because you just can't demand things from students these days. It's a mutual relationship. It works. It has to work together. And I think our students understand that, and our specialists, most certainly, who are outstanding, they understand that, and they build a partnership with that student, and it works.
And I'm sure a lot of it is like career exploration things, because you mentioned you were a football player, right? Yeah. You still probably identify pretty closely with football. When I taught middle school, when I taught high school, I can't tell you how many kids, if you went around the room and said, what do you want to be?
Right.
I'm going to be in the NBA. I'm going to be in the NFL. And I'm like, are you even on the school team? And often they weren't. Right? How do we get kids to see that there are jobs in advanced manufacturing where they can have a really nice life, or other things? I mean, what are some of the strategies you use?
So we have a lot of specialists who invite employers into the classroom. They arrange field trips for students. They do job shadowing. There are a lot of employers who, if they have that contact at the school, who is just focused, not on English or social studies or some content area, they are just focused on what do these kids need to be successful at the next level. I mean, there are a lot of employers across the state who will work with our specialists to give students opportunities to see, hey, in this one job industry that they need electricians, they need roofers, they need like all these other things within that one industry. So I think our specialists really try to show students all of the possibilities in a particular industry.
And in terms of, you have 53 of these specialists for the state. Sounds like a lot. There's 134 divisions in the state, and how are there things that you're doing to cover areas even with people who aren't your specialists, or is that something you want to do in the future?
Well, absolutely, but that comes down to funding, right?
Right.
And so the funding that we receive from the General Assembly, thank you, and then our relationship that we have with the Department of Education, because it funnels through the DOE and then to us to allocate and to send those grants out and make sure the grants are being used and all that good stuff. And so, but it comes down to funding. So right now we're at 67 programs, which we think is great. When I first took this job 4 years ago, we had 24 programs. So we're growing, and folks in schools are seeing the benefit of it. This year we have programs who don't have the grant are still participating because they see the value and the impact that we're having with students. But I would love to get to about 100 programs, fingers crossed, and see just how we can further impact our students across this great Commonwealth.
I know we talked a little bit just informally before. You mentioned that you've got students from like the Burton Center.
Yes.
Might have changed names now.
I think it will.
Which is the vocational and career program of Roanoke County Schools, but most divisions have something like that. When you look at it as the data manager part, I don't know whether this is part of what you do. I'm sure you're tracking grants and a lot of other things, but what do we know about the availability of jobs for recent graduates?
As far as what I'm hearing, like anecdotally from specialists recently, I think the job market is getting a little bit tougher from what they're saying. They're telling me about their students interviewing and things like that. It's getting a little bit
harder for them to find work.
Yes. Whereas right after the pandemic, they were just, had all kinds of choice. So I do think it's getting a little tougher, and that's just makes it our job more important, that we're giving our students the skills they need to get those jobs.
Right. And we talk about, you often see on social media and other places where we have discourse in this country, you'll see somebody say, we should stop encouraging kids to go to college because we need people in the trades. And then you'll hear pushback from people at higher ed institutions. It seems to me, as somebody who's watched I've had to go back to school a couple times. I know, it sounds like you went back to school, and how do we talk about the balance of the need for people to install solar panels and also the need for people to teach English or French,
See, that's highly individual, in terms of, we do have lots of students who are JVG students go on to post-secondary and go on to college. We do. a lot of our students do fall into the trades. At that point, we just got to make sure that they're prepared to compete at a high level, right, with other students with those particular jobs. And of course, I'm a little biased, but I'll bet on a JVG kid, knowing all the workforce skills and development skills that they're getting on a regular basis against anybody else.
Well, we talk about too, that, like, if you're talking to kids about a broad spectrum of careers, again, we've mentioned a couple times, like, careers change.
Yeah.
I'm 60 years old. The jobs that I have, that I see out there in the world now, I mean, the internet didn't exist.
Right.
Solar panels didn't exist. You know, all of these things that didn't even exist. So we're really about preparing. Can we talk about that a little bit? Like, how are we preparing kids not just for the job they're going to get out of school, but for a career?
Yeah, I think so. We touched down on a little bit of the technical skills that they need to compete, say if it's HVAC or if it's plumbing or if it's auto repair, on all of that good stuff. The added piece that we touch on is just those workforce development skills of the importance of, being to work on time, and and the importance of having good, strong communication skills with your boss and your manager and things of that nature. And so I think that's the key piece, is the fact that, I have this certificate and I have this credential, I can do X, Y, Z, I can do this, but I can also, on top of that, I have these other skills that makes me a stronger competitor.
Yeah, you hear stories of, I've recently heard a story of a kid who had a job, was doing well, and the managers came to him and said, we'd like you to come, to do doubles next week because we have a big order or whatever, and he just kind of declined. And guess what? He was let go, and he didn't understand that when they said, "We'd like you to come in," we really kind of need.
Really means right.
You guys have dealings with, like, the Virginia Career Association, I noticed, right? What is that, and how does that tie into the work that you guys do?
I'll let Courtney take on our Virginia Career Association.
So the Career Association is something that Jobs for America's graduates have. So they're the national.
So that's the national program that you guys are.
Jobs for America's, and they have a national career association with the student president, president-elect, secretary, and parliamentarian. So in Virginia, each of our sites has their own career association, and it's basically just all their students working together, identifying needs in their school or community, and problem solving, thinking of ways to address those. And then we have a state career association. Students can apply to be officers in our state JVG Career Association, and they go to Washington, D.C. in December for the National Student Leadership Academy. So a big part of JVG really is developing leadership skills as well. And it's not something we've necessarily touched on too much yet, but that, a lot of the competencies do try to, help students realize.
I'm sure it's public speaking.
Absolutely, yeah.
All of that.
All of that kind of stuff, yeah.
All right, so and another interesting, just to piggyback on what she's saying, and so they also have an opportunity to go on Capitol Hill and spend time and meet with their representative from their districts from Virginia. And so they have their jackets on, they have their ties on, and which, a lot of these students haven't been on airplanes before. They haven't stayed in hotels. They haven't ridden an escalator or an elevator. And so it's really opening their eyes to something different than what they see or what they've told themselves they could be.
Yeah.
It's completely different. So it takes them out of that element, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, I only thought I could do this. I could do all of this. And I just spoke in public to a bunch of folks around a particular topic. And so that's the heart of what JVG does.
We've talked a lot about the program and sort of the things that the program does for kids. What are the expectations of kids who participate? And either one of you can answer that question.
Well, so the expectation is for you to be successful. I mean, so we set you up so you have these barriers, because in order to be a part of the JVG program, you have to have a certain number of barriers, and I believe there's six barriers. And so that's our target audience. And so the expectation is that we work together to overcome those barriers. Now, obviously, there could be even more barriers after that because, it doesn't get easier. It always kind of gets more difficult.
What barriers are we talking about?
So with that, there are different categories. They could be academic. They could be environmental barriers that the students really don't have any control over.
Socioeconomic.
They could be social barriers. One of the recent barriers that has been added is, students who aren't connected to extracurricular activities at all at their school. Anything like that really could hinder a student from thinking, I can be successful.
You're more looking for, there are a lot of programs for jobs for kids or whatever, but you're looking for the kids who probably need more help than those kids who would normally run for president of something or whatever, right?
Yeah, maybe the kid who doesn't have someone telling them all the time, you can do this. We have specialists who do that for these students. And
as they work to overcome those barriers, I know you're looking for job placements even while they're still in school, right?
Yeah. Many of our programs have internship programs. I know there's one in this area that Roanoke County and Salem are involved with. But our specialists are actively contacting employers and saying, I have a kid who's interested in this. Do you have any opportunities, and trying to help them as much as they can.
Well, and I love the follow-up part of it because I think most programs that are K-12 end. The moment you walk across that stage, you're disconnected.
Right.
And for many kids, that connection is what has gotten them through to that point. And then all of a sudden, it's May 30th and nobody's connecting. How, I'm sure the phone calls are an important part of it, but how else do your specialists and others stay in touch with these kids for that year?
That's the main part of it. So it's interesting that you'd ask that question because we've had leadership within our career associations talking about an alumni group that you finish JVG and now you're an alumni of JVG, and that's another resource for not only for us administratively, it's for the students who are still in the programs. And so that's something that we're thinking about. But here's the thing. It's all student driven. We don't have a whole lot. We're there as a support system for them, but it's all student driven.
Because I imagine they're your biggest advocates, right? If I were
100%.
somebody who wouldn't have succeeded or don't think I would have succeeded without the program,
Right?
Bring those kids back to talk
There you go.
to those kids, right?
There you go.
Yes.
How do you help a student kind of narrow? Because at some point, maybe they start out with an unrealistic expectation, but then you expose them to all these different jobs, right? And how do you get them to kind of see what they might be good at, what they might be happy doing, and what they can make a living at?
I think that our specialists, that's not ever going to be, foolproof.
Right.
There's not ever going to be a foolproof way to do that. But I think the fact that our specialists really develop a connection with the kids and can talk to them seriously, one-on-one, okay, let's think about this. Let's take this test and see, how you do on it. Or let's think about what your hobbies are. How could that, they really develop that relationship with them to kind of help them a little bit, to steer them in the right direction. And not every kid, some kids want to go to college and maybe they don't really want to go to college, but they've been told that that's what they should do. So I think this kind of program can help students, with that connection and with the interactions with other students to really think about, what do I really want to do? Let me think about this a little more deeply.
Right. And so let me just piggyback really quickly. And so that's why I think it's equally as important. We take them on a field trip. Let's go see. You want to do this? Let's go. Let's go see what it really looks like on a day-to-day basis. Or let's invite somebody who is in that industry to come in and talk to us. So it's that immersion piece of it. And quite frankly, I do have a sports background, and the folks who have made the biggest difference in my life have always told me what I needed to hear versus what I wanted to hear. Who were very authentic and very transparent around, and so I like to call them champions. My champions always like, Rice, you can't do that. Here's what we need you to do. You can do this. So let's move you in this particular direction because your skill set fits here. not so much there. Now, if you want to go here, this is what it's going to
Right,
take.
you want to play quarterback, but guess what?
You're blocking. Right. You're blocking.
Right, we have a couple minutes left. We're down to the last little bit here, but I've a lot of what I learned about you guys was just from your website. Let's talk about what's there. Courtney, maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Like, what are some of the things people can find if people are watching this and they're curious to know, does my kid have access to this, or
Sure. Well, definitely. On our website, we have. If you go to our program, you're going to see a lot of documents there. Documents that show divisions, how they could bring JVG to their division. That show donors how they can help, not just financially, but we also have opportunities. We have a button that you can click and fill out a form and say, hey, I'd like to come in and speak. I'd like to do some job shadowing.
Great, yeah.
And kind of give us some ideas, yeah.
Sure.
And also you can go to our impact on the website and see what our numbers are based on the data. We are data driven, so you can see that on the website as well.
Okay, well, great. Well, believe it or not, that's all the time we have. I do want to thank my guests for sharing their insights. If you'd like to learn more, visit jobsforviagrads.org. For What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.